Welcome to Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings, with me, Gretta Chamberlain, Yvonne Kraeher, Leigh Stima, and the Realm of Beings. Shifting Impressions, which is one of the vehicles that supports the transmission of the Realm of Beings, is here to assist you in delving into your being by providing numerous topics and discussions for you to intake as you deepen your connection with your inner world. Shifting Impressions is here to assist you in strengthening yourself as you excavate to understand your true nature. Leigh, Yvonne, and myself, with the Realm of Beings, eagerly invite you to join us today and learn to shift your mindset, shift your thoughts, and shift your focus to recreate your life and produce a new you. Shifting Impressions starts now.
Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings. I'm Leigh, and today it's Gretta and I and the Realm of Beings. Yvonne cannot join us today. We are very happy to be on Transformation Talk Radio every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Pacific. If you happen to be listening to us live right now and you have a question about anything we discuss during the podcast, feel free to call and ask us. You can reach us at 800-930-2819. These conversations will help you examine your life and your creation of reality. They will help you to shift your impressions and understand what you're creating in your life and how it shows up. Today, the quote Greta and I will be discussing is, "Always be courageous and seek your answers internally. There is always a solution. Stay focused." Greta, how do we start today? Where do we start today?
What is courage? What is courage? Because most of us want to blame others for challenges that we actually created ourselves. I think we would like the audience to realize that the only way that you can have a challenge in the first place is that you have created it. And that's a biggie. Because we like to go outside of ourselves. So what this quote is saying is, let's take the time, let's love ourselves enough, because that internal love is going to give us the strength and the courage to look at what we've created that we don't want. You know, if we say, oh, I won tickets to the Cardinals game, you're going to be happy about that, especially if you like baseball. You're going to say, ooh. And in those cases, you're not going to necessarily think that you created it, but you did. Then when it comes time to say, oh, my mother, as a child, you can say, my mother sanctioned me because I didn't make up my bed. You know, she got angry with me. So the child is going to say, that's my mother. I don't like my mother. She's mean. She's this, she's that. Because the child doesn't know to look at themselves. So we are like children in this environment that we've created. The reason why is because we don't understand that we create our own reality. So we're like children, you know, just like a child would blame mama now or daddy. Now we're blaming somebody else. I'm blaming my wife. I'm blaming my boss. I'm blaming my teachers, you know. So that courageous means forget that. Forget blame. Be courageous. Accept that you created these things, because inside that acceptance is the solution as well. Internally, that's what it means by internally. You're not seeking the solution totally outside. You may manifest it because your thoughts are the things that are going to create the solutions, just like it created the challenge. So when you get the solutions, you work within yourself, and then you can manifest those solutions externally. But everything is internally.
Yes. I often, 2 points on courage. It does take a lot for us to it is a courageous act, actually, to put down the blame and say, oh, to take the responsibility for it is definitely an act of courage, for sure. No doubt. And often I think that we are all just taller children mucking about. We put ages on ourselves and celebrate birthdays and whatnot. However, we are just children with more money than we had when we were younger, because so many of these things that we're creating in our lives, we've been, creating since we were those small people on the playground. And often you can look at a bunch of adults and see the playground dynamics still at work, whether it's the boardroom or, a social event. So it's time for us to grow within and get it, right?
Yeah. It's a beautiful experience. I didn't want to believe that I created my own reality. When I was told that, I said, oh, crap, hecky no. I almost said the H word here, but, I just, there was no way that you were going to tell me that I created the experiences that I did not like. Are you saying I did that to myself? When my mentor told me that, and that was about 40 years ago, I said, oh, heck no. There's no way that. In working with people, I know that they're going through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us started at different ages. I didn't start until the age of 40, around 40 years old, to start to look at creation of reality. So I had already spent 40 years blaming other people, and happily blaming other people. I don't want you to think I felt sad. I was glad to blame somebody else. Ooh, look what you did to me.
Oh, right. Yes.
I say, look, ooh, you hurt me. You hurt my feelings. Ooh, look what you called me. Ooh, I fell down and hurt my knee. I go off crying to grandma, great grandma. I called Ma, I fell down. It hurt my knee. Oh, you poor thing. To get some consoling. So we're used to being consoled on the outside. And then if we don't get it from the outside, then we get very disturbed with, why did my mother or why did my grandmother console me when I fell down and scraped my knee and it hurts, you see. And we don't realize that we created that part as well. We created to fall down, and we created for them not to see about it. So when you start whenever you learn creation of reality, there are children that understand creation of reality before adults do. I had one child, we were in a class, and his mother used to bring him to class. And, the class was all about creating your own reality. And he listened every week. And he told the group once, he says, oh, I want a bicycle. And his mother said, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to get, your bicycle now. He says, oh, no, I'm getting my bicycle. I want you to know in a matter of 2 weeks, that boy had a bicycle. And he took what he learned. You're saying in this class that I can have anything I want? Anything? Well, I want a bicycle. So I have a bicycle. I swear to God, it only took about 2 weeks. And he was riding his bicycle, told us about it, told us the color and everything. So he stayed, as a child, he stayed focused. See, that's the other part of that quote.
Focus.
Yeah. He just stayed dead away. I want my bicycle. And he knew to think, not that I just want a bicycle, but he knew to claim it, as they say. And he said, I have my bicycle. See, it's not about just saying I want this. You got to really take it down into your gut like he did with the bicycle. There was no way you could convince him he was not going to get that bicycle. So when you want something, stay focused. So there's no way that will enter into your spirit to say you're not going to get what you want. And that applies to everything. This is a very important quote. It applies to everything. It applies to our health.
Right. You know, earlier when we started the conversation, you talked about our thoughts, right? Because it's our thoughts that create our realities. So I came across something today or yesterday, and it says, until you change your thinking, you will always recycle your experiences.
Yeah, that's looping. That's
Right.
what we call it, looping. And they call it looping in psychology. It's a psychological term.
Mm-hmm.
And it really means that you're going over the same thing over and over and over again. Like when you don't, go ahead.
No, I was saying that, you know, those cycles, you know, could be this, you know, constantly seeking the externality, constantly, you know, waiting for the other to change or the other to treat you differently, right? So if that's where you're focusing on the other and you're not saying to yourself, what can I do differently? How, you know, what is my role in this exchange? You will keep the same experiences up. We really have to, you know, we get stuck in the illusion of what is or what has already, you know, I say already, what is occurring, right? And if it's not what we want, it's very challenging to step out of that and see through it. And, you know, for example, this boy, you know, he didn't have a bicycle at that moment, but he was sure enough knew he had one. And I think that's a simple example, but just an example to use that, you know, clarity of mind for regardless of what's showing up in this moment. Change that thinking about it. And it is challenging. I try it myself. And listeners, as I said, I am a student here with all of you. You know, I am not standing on a soapbox preaching to you. I am learning right along with you. And it's how do we address that that little part of ourselves where because that, you know, that thing isn't there now, there's like some doubt, you know, that, oh, is it really ever going to come? I haven't been able to do it so far. You know, I'm XYZ age and so far it didn't come. You know, what is the counter mechanism to that? Is that the focus? Like, you know, asking for, you know, deliberately stating that, you know, you are changing your thoughts on this matter and you know something new will come up. I mean, because, you know, a lot of times there's some momentum and there's a constant stream of things. So to actually catch it in your awareness, in your consciousness, and pivot from that.
that can be a challenge in that, let me just respond to that question in terms of myself, that there have been things that I have looped with.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that they were finished. I thought I had dealt with them. And then it turns around and I'm in it again, and I'm going, my, here we come. It's wheeling its little head. Because there was one loop, I have several of them, but one loop that I have is 62 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine having a 62-year-old loop? And just repeat and a repeat and a repeat over and over again. And I never really looked at it like that. I saw everybody else's loops, but I didn't see mine.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Right,
Yes.
right.
There you go again, looking outward, not looking in.
Yeah. Didn't even think it was a loop. Didn't think anything about it. Just thought it was a challenge. But did not realize it was a looping challenge. You see, that's the thing. The sucker was coming and going and coming and going, and Greta was just coming and going with it. And then one day, it's like a light bulb went off, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm looping." Then the thing was to change it, and then I was doing all kinds of things. I was QDRing it, quick displace replace. I was doing all kinds of things. And I said, okay, well, it's over. It's over. I was celebrating. I literally celebrated with myself. I said, Greta, you did it. The loop is over. Okay, so a month later, 2 months later, I haven't seen it. 3 months later, boom, here it comes again. I said, doggone it, you little sucker, you. Here it was, showed up, the very thing I thought that I had gotten rid of. So right back up. So I tell people, don't get discouraged. That's that discouragement in that quote. I think it says discouragement, doesn't it? Oh, it says be courageous.
Yes.
Well, the opposite of, I guess, it would be discouragement to a certain degree. But don't get discouraged. Just don't.
Well, that's interesting because, in our notes here, I see that we had written that this discouragement is another lesson. I mean, I guess that's kind of pivots back to my initial question, right? That you're saying, I'm X age and Y is still not here. That is the discouragement, right? It's, maybe in all of this time you haven't looked in, it's this like outward looking, but you haven't taken the time to stop and see what's inside that needs to be modified, let's just say.
You don't want to look at it and see the opposite of it. You've got to claim it. If you have not, what do you mean by claiming it? Part of claiming it is that you're focused on what you want. You're focused on what you want. Don't focus on what you don't want. Focus on what you want. A lot of us focus on what we don't want because we'll say, oh, that was just a terrible experience for me. But we can go on with terrible forever.
Right, exactly.
So, let's all get grips over ourselves and let's look at the thing that we want. If you want peace, if you want to be loved and cared for, you got to love and care for yourself.
Right. So, I mean, that's a true thing, right? When you just said, oh, you want peace, look in. I mean, is it as simple as, just sort of do a self-assessment and say, like, how peaceful am I on a day-to-day basis? What is my internal state of affairs? Am I always angry, or am I always anxious, or am I always worried? Or do I find moments where there's some, stability and placidity where you're like in your full center, and those are, places we can
Mhm.
start, right?
Yep, for real.
And
Mhm.
are loving yourself, or, oh, I want someone to love me and to take care of me. But are you doing the things for yourself that show love and care for yourself? Eating correctly, or exercising, or, taking your vitamins, or, enjoying a hobby, or finding some joy in your days just for the mere like relishing of something beautiful to you or pleasant to you, a picture, a sunset, a piece of music, a piece of candy, a piece of fruit, whatever that might be. And,
Mhm.
really being in that moment and appreciating it, instead of just, at all of these distractions that we sometimes find ourselves in. Is that another way?
Absolutely. I think so. I think so. I think exactly what you said. But then somebody might come back, well, how do I love myself? I haven't loved myself all these years, or I
Mhm.
haven't manifested a wonderful, peaceful life. I
Mhm.
tell people you've got to stay focused on what you want. Because if you, let's say one person told me, I've been doing affirmations that I love myself for years, and I don't see anything that shows me that I love myself. So the one thing I tell them, that means then that the energy that supports you in not loving yourself is greater than the energy for you to love yourself. So it's the energy up here that's going to create. It's going to create. So you're down here with this energy going, nah, I don't love myself, or this person doesn't love me. This person hates me. So then you go down in the dumps about that. But then up here it says, okay, you don't want to love yourself. You think you're worthless. Okay, let's kick that in for you.
Yeah, but how do we shift that? I mean, how do we shift that balance in real time?
In real time, you start saying, I say the first thing I say is, I don't want this. I don't want this experience any longer. I don't care if you don't know about affirmations, you don't know about the QDR, just tell yourself, I'm not doing this again. I'm not experiencing this again. I don't want it. Clarify that, stick with that. I don't want this.
Mm-hmm.
Now some people may say that, okay, by you sticking to it and really emphasizing you don't want this, could be actually creating the thing that you don't want.
Right.
Okay. So once you declare that this is what you don't want,
Mm-hmm.
then you start to declare what it is you do want, and give it more energy, because it's what you do want is what you want to be above what you
Right.
don't want. So
Right.
it's switching the energies. You got to
Mhm.
switch the energy. And how do you do that if you don't know anything about energy? You put more thoughts into this. Everybody thinks. So put more thoughts right here and not here. Put it
Right. And I
here.
mean, that's a very conscious effort that we have to make, because, if you can just be mindful of the programmed tapes that reel around in your head, when you have a spare minute that you're not thinking of, the work on your desk in front of you, or the spreadsheet, or, whatever it is. But the unconscious tapes that play, I mean, it is a real practice to identify, okay, I see this situation. I no longer wish to experience that. I release it. I am creating, whatever, optimum health in my life. I am creating joy in my life, and actually kind of setting aside some moments for thoughts that reinforce those things instead of the unconscious tape.
Right. That's what you have to do. I told someone just yesterday, we were having a discussion, and the point, he wanted to make his point to me, and that was okay for you to make a point, but I just told him point blank, I said, you know what? I am not going to argue with you about this. I'm just not going to do it. And I just, went on with what I was doing. So you can refuse to do certain things that disturb you. Because one of my challenges is joy, to have joy in my life. So I tell people it's not about just sitting around saying you want joy in your life. Do some things, do things physical that show you love yourself. Do things physical that show you that you enjoy you. I know the realm of beings is always saying, fall in love with yourself. We worry about falling in love with everybody else. We need to fall in love with ourselves. And that's what I'm practicing as much as I possibly can every day, every moment. Is loving Greta. Greta, feeling that Greta is worthy. See, I have to feel that I'm worthy. I have to feel that I'm deserving of peace and joy in my life, however I define it. Because see, everybody else's sense of peace may be different from mine. My joy is bringing in a bunch of flowers and putting them all around my house. That brings me joy, or going out on my back porch and looking at my asparagus ferns smiling back at me. That's joyful. So, but don't just sit back and say, I want to be joyful, and then you wait for it to come.
Right.
And you say, nothing came.
Right.
There's be active.
Exactly. There's some doing involved. It's
absolutely
not strictly sitting in your chair. Joy.
That's right.
Because what we always say is, that act of you going outside and admiring your plants. The reason that's important is because when you're in that act of admiration and gratitude, there is an internal shift. There's an energetic shift within your being. And that's what we're going for. Like, it's that physical body internal shift that is so important. It's so vital. I mean, I think even maybe, a tool another tool you can use, or just like think of some things that just, that just make you happy when you think about them, whether it be a grandbaby or, your favorite food or some experience that, took your breath away in a good way, or, moments in time that you enjoyed, just to cultivate that energy essence within, because that's, I think, what, supplants that, lower tape, let's just say, that makes it easier to stay in that feeling place, which, the feelings, the emotions are the fuel. And it feels good. I mean, it feels good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
So have we discussed everything we needed to, Greta, on this before we take a break and come back and let the realm weigh in for a significant amount of time on this quotation?
I think we have, because we dealt with focus. We dealt with being courageous. We dealt with that you seek internally, not externally. We talked about looping. we talked about unconditional love of self, which plays a very important part in your creation of reality. I know one person once told Yvonne that unconditional love did not mean that much, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
It really does, because it sets the pace for your creation of reality. It sets the pace.
Right.
In other words, if you love yourself, the things that you're going to attract to you are going to support you in loving yourself.
Right. Which is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And what we need more of. So thank you, listeners, for joining us today. We are going to take a short break and we'll be right back, and the realm of beings will weigh in directly on this quotation. Thank you for listening. This has been Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings. We'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings. Thanks for staying with us, listeners. We've reached the part in the podcast where we hear directly from the realm of beings. So, Realm, are you with us?
Yes.
They are here with us. So Greta and I were talking about the quotation, always be courageous and seek your answers internally. There is always a solution. Stay focused. What do you have to add to our conversation today?
That is an important quote, because not just because we said it or wrote it through Greta, but because many humans are filled with fear. And consequently, they use fear to create their reality. For instance, some people are fearful of becoming ill. They focus on becoming ill out of fear instead of focusing on being in perfect health. At any instant, oh, I'm sick. Oh, I have cancer. Oh, I have this. Out of fear. Some people have fear to the extent that they create altercations with another person. I fear that person hurting me, either hurting me emotionally, psychologically, or physically, but I feel that person is going to hurt me, or I feel that person is hurting me. You see, there's a fear of that. Now, why are we talking about fear? We're talking about fear because in that quote, it said, be courageous.
Right.
You can't be courageous if you support fear in any way, shape, or form. Oh, I don't think I'm going to pass that test. You see, that's being fearful. If everyone in the audience even just took a piece of paper and wrote down from when that they could remember in their childhood, what did they fear? They would have a very long list. You know, some individuals chose to have parents that caused them to be in fear every day. So fear is not something to sit down on or sit down in. Fear is something you gave it to yourself to overcome it. I don't care what fear it is.
So how do we transition from fear to courage?
Love yourself. You see, love yourself is so important. We as beings, as the realm of beings, as we call ourselves, we have to love ourselves as well. This is not telling you to do something that we don't do ourselves. We understand what it means not to love ourselves. That's a lesson for us as well. You're not by yourselves in this situation.
So how do I phrase this? Did you transition through non-loving of self to get where you are now? Is that like you went through those lessons and now you have a stability in self-love, but you still have to maintain it to stay where you are?
Of course. Of course. We're no different from the audience other than the fact that we don't have any corporal bodies, but we still understand we're still inside existence. Everything is inside existence. I don't care what universe you're in. I don't care what planet you're on, and don't care what species you are. We're doing the same thing. We're learning to love ourselves, because in learning to love yourself is learning to accept your divinity of self. Fear is taking you into the opposite direction. I'm afraid to pay the electric company because I won't have enough money to buy bread to put it on my table for my children to eat. You see, fear. And we've said it over and over again, and you and Yvonne and Gretta have said it over again. Fear gives you what you fear. So courageous, internally in your gut, taking it into your gut. I am a courageous person. And we're going to expand that. I am experiencing being courageous at every moment of my life. Because I love myself and recognize the divinity that is within me. Therefore, there is no room for fear or discouragement. You were going to say something, Leigh.
Is that part of our challenge? Is it part of our lesson here on this 3D Earth humanoid experience that we're supposed to accept our humanness and our divinity simultaneously and somehow meld those two experiences together?
I love that question. For you, of course. Why not? Remember, there are no limitations. Even in your humanoid state of being, there are no limitations. The only reason why those limitations are there is because you put them there. Otherwise, they would not be there. So to your divinity and love of self and the learning are all one. They're all one. I'm going to say that again. You're learning something So how are you learning that? I'm learning that as a divine being. I'm learning this as a courageous being. I may be in fear of going to jump into the water and swim, but I don't lose my divinity because I'm going and jump in the water and swim, and I'm going, ooh, will I be able to do it? You see, that's fear. But you don't lose your divinity. Your divinity is always with you. You are always operating with your divinity because you're creating your reality. Now that's going to be a biggie. You are divine being. You're going through these challenges that you have given to yourself. Some people say, well, the universe. Some people say, well, karma. It doesn't matter what you call it. The fact is that you, as a divine being, still inside divinity, you never step out of divinity. Because you see, divinity is not your experience. Here, divinity, you are always divinity. We don't care if you're sitting in a prison. You are still in divinity. You are never outside of it. It's just the illusion in your mind that you think you are not divine. But you never step out of it, ever. You just create these little interesting scenarios. You like to keep yourselves busy. You'll see. What am I going to create today? A little child can say, I don't like Mary Jane, so today I'm going to go and sock her in the eye. That child still did not lose its divinity, even though it went and socked Mary Jane in the eye. And Mary Jane said, ow, you see. But Mary Jane created to be socked in the eye. Otherwise, the child couldn't think to do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, why would Mary Jane want to be socked in the eye? Because Mary Jane, there are things that are going on at home she doesn't want to see. So the other child is picking up on that at the unconscious level and saying, I'm going to go and sock Mary Jane in the eye.
But Realm,
yeah.
Are those two participants like on some kind of like level frequency? Because Mary Jane is, you know, experiencing some or creating some trauma, but the support person receives that request somehow. Whereas maybe if you were happy and blah, 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 you know, you wouldn't think to do that to someone. Yes, no, how does that work?
Well, the other child is picking up. See, we're really always helping each other. Support is really help, really. It's just that sometimes we support people you wish you had never been supported like that.
Right.
So that's why we use that example.
Okay.
But the thing is that we'll have to go to the unconscious. Books will talk about they break it all down. Conscious, pre-conscious, conscious, subconscious, and God only knows what other consciousness is in between. The one that we look at is the unconscious, because the unconscious is the force that created all of existence. The unconscious holds everything, remembers everything. Now let's bring that thought all the way down to being humanoid and to the example we gave with the two children.
Mhm.
It's not that Mary Jane has an unconscious and then the other child has an unconscious. It's that Mary Jane and the other child are sharing the same unconscious. All of these millions and trillions of people, let's just stay with the people, are sharing only one unconscious. So therefore, everything is there. The knowingness is in there. The supporting is there. The knowledge is there. Yeah.
Right, but how does that, I mean, so if there's this pool of unconsciousness, right? And, you know, just to stick with the example you gave, you know, the two children, you know, how is it kind of energetically sifted? You know, if Mary Jane and Bobby or whatever are in, like, you know, two similar states of love or whatever, that, you know, that they receive that. Whereas if Stephen was loving himself, he would have never gotten that signal from Mary Jane to sock her in the eye, because he was in a different place of love.
That's also true. That's also true. Stephen would have been in a separate place, but Stephen was right in sync with Mary Jane.
But didn't
Now, we can go into things about science now.
Okay, you're scientists.
We're going to, yes, we are, but we're not going to go deep into that science about this molecule and all of this went this way and more positive ions were over here and over there. We're not even going to get into that, because it's that just forget people to understand, create, support, create.
I guess I'm thinking like how the cast of characters get.
You want the mechanics.
Like how they, you know, how exactly does that get, how does Mary Jane, like what frequency is Mary Jane and Bobby on that she doesn't want to see something happening at home and is not feeling loved or supported, and then Bobby gets that signal and socks her in the eye to support that, where Stephen wouldn't because he's in another place of love or.
Well, see, we could start getting into the mechanics of it. That's the science. Where's the energy at?
Right, it's an energetic thing, I guess.
Everything is energy. Everything is energy. But let me say this. There are different types of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Energy is energy. If we ask people, scientists, to define energy, probably go into a lot of electrons, protons, atoms, molecules, all that kind of stuff would be going in there, negative and positive and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to deal at that understanding of it. We're going to just take it that because the unconscious knows, it will provide that experience. There had to be something in Stephen already inside of him that wanted him to support Mary Jane.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been that they had a disagreement and he retained anger about that and had a revengeful spirit, took on a revengeful energy, which is one of the podcasts. It would be good to discuss emotions, because emotions themselves are beings.
Right.
Okay, they're closer to being a being like me than being a being like you, because emotions, you don't see a corporal body of emotions.
Right.
Just like you don't see a corporal body of us, but we still exist. An emotion of revenge is still existing. And Stephen called for it because he didn't like what Mary Jane said to him at school yesterday, or she took his pencil or whatever, and he didn't like it. So the revengeful spirit, all he had to do was think of a thought, and that would connect him with that revengeful energy. So here we have him with revengeful energy. Here we have Mary Jane not loving herself, not wanting to see things happening at home between her parents, or just, let's say, with her father. So then Stephen wants his creation of reality is, let me get back at Mary Jane. So the revenge and the anger comes into play with him. But at the same token, he's supporting Mary Jane.
Right. But how do
and
we
he socks Mary Jane. She had a problem with daddy, so he socked her in the right eye, because he could have socked her in the left eye. He could have socked her on the arm.
Right, but we're almost wrapping this episode up, Realm. How do we pivot that back to, Greta and I were talking about, just quote unquote adults are just taller and have more money, children. But how do we pivot that back to, looking internally, if these are two grownups, let's just say, who might have some more awareness?
One thing that we say is you have to, first of all, the people that are listening to this podcast are listening because they're shifting their thoughts. That's one thing. That's why they're listening to this. So therefore, it's going to be a shifting of thought and going internal. You have to consciously go internal.
Right, if you feel that you're having these revenge thoughts, let's say.
Yeah. How do you get rid of it?
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, or Greta said, that just say you don't want this. I want peace instead. But you've got to make the peace part more intense than the other part, the revenge part. You want the peace part to override the revenge part. So therefore, in your mind, you give more focus to the peace part versus the revenge part. That's one way. Another way is go and get some books. Read. Get books that offer you affirmations if you don't know how to write your own, and read it and say it over and over and over again, affirming what you want, not what you don't want.
Realm, we have about 20 more seconds. Any final words?
Our final words are, as usual, love yourselves unconditionally and be in peace and joy internally.
Thank you, Realm, for your wisdom and sharing your guidance with us. This concludes another episode of Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings, until we create each other again.
Once again, thanks for joining us at Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings on TransformationTalkRadio.com. As you have explored today's creation of reality experience with Leigh, Yvonne, the Realm, and me, Greta, each of you is being supported by us in further developing the understanding that you are not just an individual existing in linear time and space, but a multi-dimensional force of infinite possibilities who is connected to all. So begin to create the realities you want. Join us every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time and 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Shifting Impressions at transformationtalkradio.com. So long until we create each other again next Friday.